Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or is time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clown. My guest today is a novelist whose books include Girl in Development, Camp Rules, and Moms Like Us. She's also a screenwriter and TV writer-producer. She was a co-producer on the freeform thriller The Watchful Eye and adapted the Korean hit Oh My Ghost into a supernatural dramedy for Blumhouse Studio Dragon. Currently, she's adapting Moms Like Us for MGM as a television show. Jordan Roeder, welcome back to Hindsighting.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
This episode is part of our mini-series 1981ers, where we examine a single movie from 1981, and today we're looking at Arthur. It won Oscars for Best Supporting Actor and Best Original Song. It was nominated for Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay. So, Jordan, why 1981? Let me explain. When I was a kid, you and I talked about the 80s in our Terms of Endearment episode. I'll be a little bit more specific and nostalgic with 1981. So when I was a kid, I went to a video store called Video Pursuit, which has now been gone for 30 years, which is just horrible to think about. And what I would do is I would look at the boxes. I'd walk around and look at the boxes and the posters, which were like these beautiful hand-painted posters, which I've talked a lot about on this podcast, how much better movie posters were back then, because they were like these beautiful paintings. And I'd pick up a movie and I'd read what it was about, and I'd look at the year. And it seemed to me that every movie came out in 1981. Now, I know that that's not possible, but it's a pure nostalgia thing. It just was a lot of franchises had movies in 1981. As I got to know my directors, they had a movie out in 1981. Again, this isn't like a hard stat. This is just why I'm doing 1981ers as opposed to 1984s or 1986ers, 87, because you could do a series like this on almost any year in the 80s. I feel like 83 is a little thin, 80 is a little thin. Not that those are bad movie years, but I don't think just programming wise, I don't think it would be a much shorter series. So, and we talk a lot about in this podcast about, do we need more than 5 Best Picture nominees? And I feel like 81's a year where you can easily get to 10. You can easily get to 10. I mean, and I haven't even seen everything. I mean, like, there's like 20 movies or so. We're not going to cover all 20 in this series, but there are 20 movies that range from kind of guilty pleasures to really good to stone cold, some of the best movies ever made. And we've covered a lot of them. We're getting toward the end of our 81 series as we record this. But yeah.
I mean, which ones you've covered? I just want to know.
Sure. So we've covered, up to now, we've done Modern Romance, Blowout, S.O.B., Sharky's Machine, American Werewolf, The Great Muppet Caper, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Absence of Malice. That's what we've covered up to now.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
I mean, how many of those movies have you seen, heard of, like?
I would say I've seen probably about half of them.
Okay.
as you were going, maybe a little bit less. So 1981, just to give you an idea, I was 6. But my parents were like the parents who took me to see, like, I mean, again, like, some of this may have been told to me and some of it I kind of remember, or I might remember because they told it to me, but like,
right.
They took me to see High Anxiety in the theater. They took me to see Jaws in the theater, E.T.
Yeah.
So I remember, I think they took me to see Arthur in the theater.
You think?
And at 6 years old. And I was like, what fun being drunk looks like. It was like,
yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, that's what, and I think that's maybe why the remake didn't do as well, was a moment in time.
Yeah, well, the remake sadly hasn't aged well because of Russell Brand's involvement. I thought the remake was okay. I thought that it was, I mean, it shouldn't have been remade. Have you seen the sequel? Because I haven't. Arthur 2 on the Rocks?
No.
Okay.
No,
I
haven't.
haven't.
Know there was one.
Yes, there's a sequel that came out in 1988, and apparently they lose all their money. And I guess the ghost of Hobson is in it. I may have that wrong. This was a real movie. It came out in 88, and my friend Billy Corbin, who's been on the show twice, does this really funny impression of Dudley Moore walking in and being like, "Honey, we're poor." Like, That's
my
all
God.
I know from the movie. I've
I
never
think
seen.
didn't they already make that movie? It's called Brewster's Millions.
Yeah, well, Brewster's Millions, but Brewster's Millions is a different thing because Brewster's Millions is
You have to lose it within a certain
he
period of
he
time to
has
get it.
he's got 30 days to spend $30 million, and if he does, he gets 300 million, which is a
Yeah,
great. They need to remake that movie. That's a fucking killer concept, and
great,
that you
great
could do so
concept.
much with that. But no, it does. Yeah, that is a thing going on in the 80s. It's sort of like this look of this sort of examination of extreme wealth and like class and stuff. But well, let's get into Arthur. But first, a few few stats and facts. I'm curious how many of these you know, because some of these I knew, some of these I didn't. So Dudley Moore was said to have based his performance partly on Peter Cook, who was used to be his comedy partner in the 60s. Peter Cook's excessive drinking had soured his relationship with Dudley Moore in the 70s. So his drinking led to their kind of breaking up. The movie's song, which won an Oscar, Arthur's theme, parentheses, the best you can do, was co-written by Christopher Cross, Burt Bacharach, Carol Bayer Sager, and Peter Allen. Now, Peter Allen was Liza Minnelli's ex-husband, and his only contribution to the song was this famous lyric, "When you get caught between the moon and New York City, the best you could do and fall in love." That was his contribution. He said he came up with this line when he was sitting on an airplane that was stuck on a holding pattern over JFK. And even though that was his only contribution, the other three songwriters insisted that he receive a songwriting credit, which means he ended up winning an Academy Award for coming up with just that one line.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. If
Yeah.
only things were that easy still.
Yes. The role of Hobson, which won Best Supporting Actor for John Gielgud, was originally intended for either David Niven or Alec Guinness. Arthur was number 4 in 1981. It grossed $95 million, putting it in between Superman 2 and Stripes. This was a big hit.
Wow.
This story I love. It's pretty awful, but I kind of love it. So you know, the end of the movie, Arthur gets beat up and he's like really bloody. So after shooting that scene, Dudley Moore went back to his hotel in costume. He's got tattered clothes. He's all bloody. And he was in an elevator at the Waldorf Astoria with his girlfriend, Susan Anton, who was 8.5 inches taller than Dudley Moore. And they're in a full elevator. And he says, I won't do the accent. He says, "Susan, I told you I'd be home. Why wouldn't you believe me?" And everybody in the elevator was just aghast. We basically pretended that she beat the shit out of him just for fun. Different time. This is an incredibly sad stat that we're going to talk about a lot. Steve Gordon, who wrote and directed this film, died unexpectedly of a heart attack just over a year after it was released. He was only 44. Really horrible. According to his widow, John Belushi was offered the role of Arthur, but ultimately turned it down, fearing typecasting. And last thing, Carrie Fisher and Deborah Winger turned down the role of Linda Marola. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
Deborah Winger, who you and I talked at length about
Yeah.
in terms. So yeah, let's get into Arthur. I'm gonna start with this. This is episode 30. This was the hardest movie to take notes on because every time I was writing something down I thought was funny, I was hearing 6 other things that I thought were funny and be like, shit, this was a really hard movie to keep up with if you're taking notes. And I could
Mhm.
see some people maybe saying it's a really hard movie to keep up with if you're watching it because the tonnage of one-liners in this, a lot of which I forgot,
Yeah.
is just astounding. That's my macro take on this, is that this was just a really fucking hard movie to take notes on because I kept writing stuff and I think this might be the most just the most pages of notes I've taken on a movie,
Yeah.
mainly because
Yeah.
I was just writing down lines.
I remembered it being hysterically funny, and I've watched it, I think, in between. I feel like I've seen it semi recently,
Uh-huh.
so it wasn't that much of a surprise. But what I did notice this time around was the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't huge BC stories. There was no mystery. There was no. It was pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that they don't make movies like that anymore. You can't
No.
say, "Here's the pitch." It's like people would be like, "What else?"
Yeah. You can't that's a great place to kind of start this because it is so simple and something I noticed, and I don't mean this in terms of its tone, but I noticed 3 Woody Allen collaborators in this movie. This has nothing to do with Woody Allen other than it taking place in New York, but Susan Morse, who was Woody Allen's editor forever in this
Mhm.
time, and then Charles Joffe and Robert Greenhut produced all of his movies until they died.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's interesting. And again, I don't ascribe, other than it being very character based and being set in New York City, a Woody Allen um, aesthetic to this. But I just do think it's interesting that there's like these three key collaborators of his in a movie set in New York that's very character based. Again, I don't think that it's going for a Woody Allen Woody Allen sort of vibe at all. That just popped out of me as the movie started and we're looking at these opening credits. That just like jumped out at me. It's like, oh, I didn't know. Like sometimes a DP or well, in this case it is an editor. Sometimes a DP will pop out. You're like, oh, Robert Elswit shot this movie or something. But that just jumped out at me as something kind of interesting that like these producers, that Steve Gordon somehow hooked up with these producers who do character-based movies set in New York exclusively.
Mhm.
It just seemed like a really good marriage to me, and the editor too.
Yeah.
Having such a great editor who I think is either about to start working with Woody Allen or is at this time. I know she's cutting his movies exclusively around this time. I don't know if they've started
Yeah.
yet. I don't have that at my fingertips.
I was really interested this time watching it, having teen kids and being middle-aged, like um watching that the scene with him and his butler, um uh why am I blanking on his name?
Hobson.
Hobson. um I like, it's funny having watched that as a kid, I thought it was like a straight comedy, and having watching it now as an adult, um it's such a beautiful scene that he has with Hobson, and it's such a beautiful vulnerable moment
Sorry, which
in
scene are we referring to? Sorry.
the where Hobson is in the hospital.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes, it is.
And then he sleeps over and he has the food delivered, and
Yeah.
it's it is it is really such a touching, beautiful, really not funny scene. It has like its moments, but it is so sweet.
Yeah.
And seeing him, and so I was kind of I'll always remember that ending with him, being so drunk, and the wedding and everything. But I kind of was like, there could have been a version where he stayed sober, and that was his arc. Like, it felt to me like that was kind of a step backwards. Maybe that's the more natural way of really what would have happened. But
Yeah.
like, what I mean, I think if it were getting made now, he would have sobered up and,
Yeah.
still made that decision to, break off the wedding, but it wouldn't have been a crazily drunken decision.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting movie about alcoholism, and I remember when Nick Cage was doing press, or maybe even like, yeah, I think when he was doing press for Leaving Las Vegas, he said he watched 4 performances and this was one of them.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when he said that, and Arthur at that time was the only performance that I had seen. He said it was this, Jack Lemmon in Days of Wine and Roses, Ray Milland in Lost Weekend, and Albert Finney in Under the Volcano, if I didn't say that one already. But it was funny when he mentioned Arthur, I was like, "Oh yeah," like, because the alcoholism in this movie is mostly played for laughs, you know. And I think
Yeah.
Roger Ebert said this great thing, maybe in his review of this movie, but he said like a lot of things that movies forget is that drunks can be really, really funny, you know? And that's not to say that alcoholism isn't a serious thing, but like this movie, I think does this incredible thing where, you know, this guy's a fall down drunk, so obviously he's in pain and he's unhappy and there's things missing from his life, but it doesn't belabor it. I mean, there's definitely people like Arthur, you're drinking too much, but you see when he meets the Liza Minnelli character, he happens to be sober and he's never drunk around her, or it's not, or he's not drunk because he's unhappy, and she never says, Arthur, you have to quit drinking or I'm going to leave you. It's like it's just so, it just trusts the audience so much to know that like this guy's has everything, which has left him with nothing, and he's deeply unhappy. And this is one thing, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but there's one scene briefly with his father, who's a prick, and and we get it, and it's really well written. I can only presume that Arthur's mother is dead, and probably has been dead for a long time. She's never mentioned, and we never get a sense of. I'm not saying this is a flaw. I think this actually might be a feature, not a bug. I think it's really interesting that we never hear about his mother. He doesn't talk about his mother. The mother, in my sort of take of this, has just been gone for a long time. Because Arthur, I don't know how old Dudley Moore is here. He looks to be about 45-ish, maybe. Maybe a little younger. It's hard to tell in the 80s. Let's just call him 45 and move on. But I thought that was interesting that, like, the Hobson character is his mother and his father. Like, he takes that role on. And I don't know. I think it's interesting. Another thing that they make you do now is they make you explain where the mother is.
Right. Well, did you catch when he's in the bar after Hobson dies that he says, "My father died"?
Yeah, I did catch it, and I think it's one of the things in the remake that they do, because Helen Mirren plays the Hobson part in the remake, and when she dies, he says, "Oh, my mother died." So I think they took that from this, but yeah, I think it's done a little bit. I mean, everything about this is
I
better.
think one of the many reasons that remake didn't really work is that, in addition to Russell Brand being wildly problematic,
Yeah,
is that he's also just, he has the edge that the original Arthur, and I can't remember any names because that's my brain on menopause.
Dudley Moore.
Dudley Moore has always been so likable,
Oh
so
my God, yeah,
vulnerable, so you and he's so silly, and
yeah,
he's so and Russell has that edge.
yeah,
Why that character works as Arthur is because he's ultimately a kind and gentle soul,
yeah,
who you're like, all right, well, he's had everything, he does nothing, he's, but he's not like a brat, like he's a sweet,
yeah.
lost person.
Yeah, and you see that I love the scene. I mean, I'm gonna say I love the scene a lot in this movie because I don't think this movie puts the wrong foot down, except for maybe one thing we'll get to later on, and it's a small thing. I want to get your opinion on it. But when he picks up the prostitute, and you know, she likes him. Obviously, she's being paid to be there, but like he's got like kind of good chemistry with her. It's not about her, but
Yeah.
he isn't like, oh, I'm gonna buy this woman off the street and degrade her. It's like, I'm gonna take her. Where do they go? The Four Seasons? Where they go? The Waldorf or something? I don't remember where they go. Or the Plaza. I think they go to the
I thought
Plaza.
it was his house, no?
No, they go to the Plaza. He takes her to dinner at like,
Oh,
they go to her house after. Like, there's a scene, they wake up in his house.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think he takes her to the Plaza or someplace like that. And like once they kind of start talking, it isn't, I mean, he's drunk, but I think he just is so starved for like company. And he gets some of that from Hobson, but Hobson's obviously on his case. Like Hobson calls him a little shit, and Hobson says you have to do this. And I mean, Hobson's a parent. It's different. It's different. It's a different relationship. I think that like this guy is just so starved for love and for friendship. And I just think that
I think also the thesis of the movie is, if you've been raised with money, if you have money, you are not interesting,
yeah,
and you are like, and you can't really relate to anybody else, and
yeah,
so, and you just exist in this world,
right.
and obviously that is a very black and white way of looking at things.
I think you're right
um,
though.
yeah,
I no, I think you're totally right.
and that is why, because he doesn't seem to have access to normal people, and so I think that's why he is looking at, is introducing himself to prostitutes, and like it feels, and that's probably why he also, loved, again, no words, the female character,
Liza
uh,
Minnelli, Linda.
reluctantly. And I think her realness
Yeah,
and her attitude and everything is so different from that waspy, stuffy world he grew up in,
hmm
that was what he was attracted to.
yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, this movie comes down to two relationships. You know, Dudley Moore and John Gielgud, and Dudley Moore and Liza Minnelli, and Liza Minnelli is just fantastic in this. I'm not. I guess my relationship with her is sort of I knew her from this, which is probably good. I don't, and obviously I've grown, in the like Arrested Development and all these other things, but I think this is, and I haven't seen every movie that she's done, but of what I've seen, I think this is like the most appealing she's ever been in a movie, and I think that she's obviously, it's a romantic comedy, and I guess I never think about it that way, but it is a romantic comedy and really one of the best ones. That it's at least for my thinking. I mean, it really is a great rom com, if we can think about it that way. And I think that I totally buy. It seems like such a like obvious thing, but when he's watching her and he meets her and she says something, "Oh my god, she's fantastic." It's like I get it. Like she
Yeah.
is such a breath of fresh air, and the
Yeah.
fact that he happens to be sober when he meets her, it's like he's always chasing this feeling of like, I don't need to drink. And the movie never says this, which I think is just so smart. It's just like he's like, I don't need to be drunk around this woman because this woman's giving me this thing that I don't need to be altered. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want anything to get in the way of this. I don't want any fog to get in the way of this. I just think it's such a great. I mean, their chemistry is so good. I mean, otherwise this movie wouldn't work. It's Captain Obvious, but it is worth shouting out.
But I think that Arthur needed to kind of dull himself to like make himself feel numb around these numb people. I mean, that's
Oh
the
yeah.
idea. And so around her, he came alive and he didn't need to, or want to dull himself around her. But it's interesting because, I mean, you can call it a romantic comedy, but if you actually look at their scenes together, their scenes together were chemistry. That's what, I think made it work. But their scenes there weren't like the moments where you're like, they're connecting on this, they're connecting on that, they're having this great conversation.
Mhm.
You understand why they would go to the place of like, let's spend the rest of our lives together. They have like four scenes together. It's pretty thin.
Mm.
When you look at it, but what is not thin is like their performances and their chemistry
Yeah.
on screen.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I think you're right because I think they do a lot with a little. Not that the writing isn't strong, but just the amount of time. Because this movie is like it's like an hour and 45 minutes or something. It's really, really tight. And this is an old saw on this podcast already, 30 episodes in. If they made this today, this movie would be 2 hours and 25 minutes, and there would just be so much bloat, and there'd be so many fucking sidekicks. She'd have a sidekick. She'd have a best friend who drinks red wine and is kind of slutty, and he'd have a sidekick who's like a womanizer, and he's like, "Oh man, just nail her," and all this stuff. I mean, even joking about these things is a cliche. Like even like parroting these things is a cliche. But I just love, I love when a character palette is just what it needs to be, and when every character is given something to do, whether it's in a rom-com or or like a thriller. But I feel like romantic comedies kind of are the worst offenders because we saw this thing in the 2000s where we're supposed to watch two people fall in love and they're always in groups of people. They're always in groups of like her friends, his friends, their friends their friends sort of clashing and stuff. It just became this real nasty habit that rom-coms got into of just too many people being in them. Just like I always want to call the fire marshal because it's like we don't
Yeah.
need all these people in here. And I think
Yeah.
Arthur doesn't do that. It's like there's no one in this movie who takes up space. And even the character, what's her name? Susan, who Jill Eikenberry plays, his fiance. Even that character, they do such a great job with her because they show her, like he says at one point, it's like, Susan, you're an asshole. And it's like, yeah, she's an asshole. And so you don't feel she's just like a sort of, you used the term a minute ago. I think it was great. Like she's just sort of numb. She's numb and boring and uninteresting. And you don't for 1 second feel like, well, why would he cheat on this woman? It's just like, I mean, why would he? And I'm not even sure he cheats on her because they have no relationship. So I think I feel empathy for Arthur even when he's with Susan because it's like this woman it's just boring. Like he'd be
Yeah.
miserable with her.
I mean, without sounding, you know, too PC here or whatever, I mean, this is a classic 80s rom-com written by a man.
How so?
Uh, First of all, I mean, if you look at the women, I mean, I think that the Liza Minnelli character has a lot of character, but she also just kind of like falls for this guy.
Hmm.
And we don't really see her life aside from the fact that like here she is, this woman who takes care of her father,
Hmm.
who works, who's okay being poor, makes the best of it.
Hmm.
um, and and then Susan is just an asshole.
Yeah.
And he's got the rich grandmother. If you look at the women, and the beautiful relationship is really him and Hobson.
Yeah.
Those are the and then I guess the Liza Minnelli character is also a likable character, but she's not so wildly dimensional, and she's
Hmm.
not given so much to do.
Hmm.
She's more of a kind of foil for him to react to,
Hmm.
versus um having her own story.
Hmm.
And and just like the fact that, I mean, if we were making this movie now, the Susan character would have shades. It would be like she would have a side piece, and she'd be doing this because she's a good girl who, wants to keep her money, but she's in love with someone else.
Hmm.
Or, she would have some other, there would be more to her. I don't want to say I find it offensive how simple she is,
Hmm.
but it is like, it is not something that bothered me when I saw it as a girl,
Right.
because I was like, that's how we saw women drawn. And that's how we saw them, on screen a lot of the time, was like, she's rich, she's beautiful, she's daddy's girl, she does what she's told.
Hmm.
And doesn't have a lot of there.
Right.
And I think now you can't get away with that for the most part, thank God,
Yeah.
because we have more female writers, and the male writers, I think, are rightly so held more to task. And as are women portraying men.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, I think the Susan character is a caricature. I think she's drawn that way so that we know it's okay for him to
Yeah,
betray her. So I think
yes,
it's fair what you're saying. I guess with the Linda character, I mean, yeah, I think it's not quite a two-hander in that we're rarely seeing her without him. Um, so I think that's a fair assessment, and I don't remember if the remake handled that any better. It doesn't really matter because the remake just is not as good as this.
yeah,
But it could be a case of Liza Minnelli possibly elevating what was on the page. Even if I
yes.
were to read the script, obviously I'd have the movie in my head. So reading the script, unless I read the script and never saw the movie, there'd be no way to know. I mean, you'd have to give it to somebody who didn't know this movie, hadn't read it. I think that's all fair. I mean, I guess you could argue that this movie is about Arthur. It's called Arthur, and that the relationship between he and Hobson is given equal, if not more, screen time
More.
than, yeah. So I think that's I mean, yeah. I mean, Hobson's in the movie as much as Liza Minnelli, maybe pound for pound more. I'd have to like have my stopwatch out, but
Yeah.
so that's not to discount what you're saying, but it's possible there is a read that this is about two love stories between a man and his surrogate father, and a man and this woman.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's definitely, yeah. I don't think there's anything remotely.
But you could still have the Susan character be an asshole,
Mhm.
but give her shades,
Yeah.
give her more depth than just like, I'm so thrilled to be marrying this drunk
Right.
that my dad picked out for me to marry, and I'm beautiful and tall and have money, but this feels like a great idea, because also they position her as like smart and educated
Sure.
and articulate, and you're like, I just like part of me wants to see the movie from her perspective.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
what is the movie that is Susan?
yeah. It could have been done in the movie we have now, possibly at the end. It could have been because I have some issues with that wedding scene, and maybe not the entire scene, but that could have been a place where Susan could have been like, fine. I don't like everything you just said. Like, what am I fighting for here? This guy's older than me. This guy's at least 20 years older than me, 15 years older than me. Again, age, I don't know. This guy's a drunk. I could marry any number of guys and any number of wealthy men who are interested in me. Yeah.
And
Cause
if
I
it was being made now, they'd be like, the reason why they have to get married is they're like merging their companies. There would be like some like
That's what
big
Sabrina
plot
is. Remember
point. Yeah.
Sabrina? Both versions of Sabrina, they want William Holden / Greg Kinnear to marry this woman because his older brother wants to make a merger. And it's funny because watching this, um, I felt like that. I felt like I forgot that about Arthur, and I was confusing Arthur with Sabrina because there's some overlap. It's like New York and and like obscene wealth and all that other stuff. Yeah, I think that's fair. I actually did feel bad for Susan. Um, the one time she kind of asserts herself rightfully when they're at their engagement party and someone shouts out, "Arthur, how do you feel about getting married?" And he I forget he plays something like what does he play? Like I don't know. He says something. He plays like a sad song or something, like as a joke. And she says, "Oh, great! That makes me feel great." I kind of did feel bad for her in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think you could definitely look at this Susan. I guess you could look at both female characters and say, yeah, this was written by a man. I think that's fair. I'm not going to push back on that. Um, yeah, I think that's certainly fair, and that's something
But
that
that's that's the type of movie that like I grew up on where I was like,
yeah,
oh yeah, no, this is how women are and this is how women behave and men are hysterically funny and brilliant. And then, and then I kind of then you start seeing other representations and
right.
other and it's funny to look at it now, look back at it, and still find the joy and the humor and
Right.
the intelligence and the things that I always loved about the movie, while also, kind of holding it accountable for what is, you know, what didn't work, what doesn't work now and shouldn't have worked then.
Yeah, I do think that Liza Minnelli is funny in this movie. I don't think
Yeah.
that she has like 'cause there's a moment I like jumping around here where when they meet and she says she's about to get on the bus and she says, "Are you married?" And he says, "No." And then she steps off the bus and like taps it and says, "Okay, guys, you can go." I thought that was just a really so I think she has moments. I think she has moments like that where she's funny. I think it's a different kind of funny than what he's doing because he's just like a zinger machine,
Yeah.
and there's so much of that in this. So I do think again their chemistry is really good. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, well, let me ask you this. I'm almost afraid to ask. Do you think she's a manic pixie dream girl, or do you think that she's better drawn than that? Performance or writing, a combination of both.
I thought she was an interesting character. I think she has
Okay.
depth, but I also wonder if I were to look at the script,
Mm.
if that depth came from the performance
Yeah.
versus the words. And I do think that bus moment was hysterical, and
Yeah.
also is it speaks to the kind of what you don't expect about this character, because she's not like, I'm fine on my own and I just want to live alone with my dad. Like she's
Right.
like, no, no, I want to get married. This guy is interesting.
Yeah.
He saved me. We have this instant connection.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that there's a really interesting thematic through line about caring for other people,
Mm.
about caregivers, like, and what that looks like. So, she cares for her father. She makes sure he dresses. She tries to get him a job. She takes care of his health. She makes him food. And I think Arthur really responds to that. He's always been taken care of by Hobson. And then when Hobson gets sick, he says, I'm going to take care of you.
Mm.
and that's that kind of turning point for him as a character, I think. Which is why I hate that at the end, not hate, but like I have some issues with the fact that he's so wasted at the end, because I feel like that's this huge growth moment. And I understand like it's human to, fall back on these things, but I just wish that there had been I don't know, that like he had made that choice sober.
So we're talking about the wedding scene. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
wedding scene because I have some issues with it also. We were jumping around, but we've both kind of danced around this. So let's just get to it because it's my show and I'll choose the order.
Yeah.
I have an issue with the wedding scene. So your issue, just to kind of recap, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that he makes two really important decisions, or maybe it's one important decision to be with Linda and not have any money, or at least that's the risk he's taking. And your issue, so make sure I'm getting it right, is that he's drunk while he makes that decision.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually think that didn't occur to me in my watch, but now that you bring it up, I have that issue with it also. My issue with the wedding scene is actually smaller, so let's just get it out of the way. When I was a kid and I saw this on TV, I don't remember the first time I saw this movie A to Z. This was like on HBO or maybe even paid, maybe even like, network TV. So it was one of these mini movies, like a lot of these 81ers, where I didn't know where the beginning was or the end was, because the movie is kind of episodic. There is like a story, but you could pick this movie up on TV and enjoy it, and you can kind of follow the plot. It's as simple as it is. But I remember being very little, and I would watch anything that wasn't nailed down, as this podcast has shown, or certainly this 81er series has shown. And I remember watching the wedding scene where the father takes out the knife and he's about to stab Arthur, and I was terrified. Now, out of context, if you're a little kid, that could seem like a horror movie, I didn't know who Dudley Moore was. I knew Dudley Moore from this, so I didn't have any frame of reference to him or anything like that. Um, I do think that for me is a wrong foot that this movie puts down. I mean, it's set up that Susan's father is like this hunter, that he's like this crazy person, and I like that actor and I like that performance, but like I think that's like one of the things in the movie that's a little too broad because of course Arthur's not going to get stabbed, you know. What it reminded me of, and I mean, there's a lot of romantic comedies that climax at weddings. Four Weddings and Funerals what popped into my mind because it's a similar thing where Hugh Grant doesn't want to marry this person because he's in love with someone else, and that scene in that movie, which I'm sure you've seen many times,
Yeah.
is handled so beautifully, and it doesn't stretch credibility, but it still has like that very public sort of humiliation and all that other stuff. But I think so that was my issue with it. But I think your issue is much more interesting to talk about because yeah, you're right. He makes this important decision and he's wasted. Now it makes sense that he gets wasted because he doesn't want to marry this woman and he's so sad. So I don't bump on it logically. It's like, yeah, we've seen that's how this character does. That's how this character deals with his sadness. He drinks, which maybe you could apply to anyone who drinks, to oversimplify and be reductive. But yeah, I now that you bring this up, yeah, it's interesting that if there were a way, and I'm not saying we should rewrite Arthur real quick, if there were a way for that scene to happen and then either he not be drunk or he is drunk, which makes total sense, but some time passes where he can sober up, like he's in a hospital or something. Again, I'm not trying to rewrite the movie. I do think I think the wedding scene we're both saying is a slightly wrong foot that this movie does put down.
Well, so two things. One of my favorite moments is whether it works or not is when they do a close up on the knife in like a huge block of Jarlsberg cheese, and I was like, this is so 1981. Like nothing makes me happier than seeing a huge block of Jarlsberg cheese. Like also that it was in like her like bridal suite, like that she had it. I don't know.
Why is that 81 though? The fact that a woman would eat cheese before her wedding?
Like I mean, I come from the place of I can't believe anybody isn't lactose intolerant, number one. Number two is like I just I don't remember the last time I saw a huge block of Jarlsberg cheese. Like
Okay.
it was the 80s and it was very reminiscent for me. And so when he took the knife out, I was like, all I could see was the Jarlsberg. But something that did occur to me is like, what happened to his dad? Like his dad was the one who was pushing it, but then the wedding scene is all about his grandmother, and the grandmother comes and she's the one who stops him from stabbing him repeatedly. Like, so it's like I feel like the dad actor had like other plans that day or
I
like had to shoot.
I think I think the dad is such a non-entity in Arthur's life, and his was it his grandmother or his aunt? Is it his grandmother?
I thought it was his grandmother, but
Okay.
maybe
Either way, the older woman who's slightly more sympathetic to him, he's like, marry Susan and cheat, like she's like, I know I know you're not gonna be happy, but
yeah.
you're gonna do it. I think I'll defend that part of it. I think the dad is such a non-entity in his life. It's like the dad has to schedule a meeting with Arthur, or Arthur has to schedule a meeting with his dad via Hobson. That
Yeah.
like I think the dad I think that's purposeful. I think the dad is a non-entity because otherwise why would Hobson have such a huge role? And I think that um
Honestly, I think you could do without that dad character completely and just make because I loved that grandmother aunt character and she felt quite real to me.
Yeah,
Like
she is very well drawn. I think as sort of one dimensional as Susan is, I think the aunt mother, because I can't remember if she's an aunt or a grandmother, does have some dimension because she is like, and I love her. I guess I have some issues with how the wedding thing was staged, but I do love jumping just a minute later to the last scene where the aunt says, "Okay, Arthur, you can keep your money, but it's not because I'm moved by the power of your love. It's because I can't have a Bach be poor." So I think the
yeah,
movie really sticks to its guns about class and
yeah,
about image. Is that, and I think a lesser movie and movie we might get today is a tear rolling down her eye, her lip quivering, and being like, "Arthur, you have shown me that love matters more." She's just like, "No, no, no. I'm not having my someone with my last name be poor. Keep your money." It's like, and she knows he's not bluffing,
yeah,
but it's so I thought that was a really I don't know, I think the movie really sticks to its thesis, it
yeah,
sticks to its era, and I thought that was kind of great because it's not treacly. It's just
yeah.
like, no, 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 I can't have this.
Well, I also thought that something that was interesting and I really liked is her honesty about like, I'm okay being poor. I know how to be poor. I can do it. Money sounds great. But like
Right.
I would be open to that experience, but it's not like she's a gold digger, like
No,
not in any way because she has certain principles and scruples and like a real identity and heart. And so I like that part of her that is nuanced.
yeah, I think so too. Speaking of nuance, a scene in this movie that you talk about how a lot of this movie is very serious, and I think that the best comedies kind of are, like,
Mhm.
and maybe that's why the last thing I'll say about the wedding scene, maybe like that scene with the dad with the knife just seems unserious. Like it doesn't seem tethered to
Too
reality.
broad.
It's too
Yeah,
broad in a way that the rest of this movie really isn't.
right.
This movie has fun things like him being in a race car and in his car and like the train tracks and his apartment really reminded me of Silver Spoons. I don't know if this movie started the if you're rich, you have fucking train tracks in your house. Because I was a kid, Silver Spoons, I wanted Ricky's house. And
I wanted Ricky. I wanted to marry him and be Geordie Roeder Schroeder.
well,
That
sweetheart,
was,
you dodged the bullet.
he's not my type anymore. Let me put it that
Well, if you
way.
if you saw his meltdown at Costco during COVID, I think you'd be very happy. I don't think you wanted to be sitting next to him standing next to him at the Costco line. And if you don't know what
No.
I'm talking about, lucky you.
No.
But no, what I think is, I think this movie's charted so brilliantly, when Hobson starts to get sick and he has that scene and Arthur's sober, crucially, And he says, I broke it off with Linda. And Hop says, I don't see why. You could have saved a fortune on prostitutes. And Arthur's like, don't you ever talk to her. Don't you ever talk about her like that again, old man. Why are you such a goddamn snob? And he storms out. And then he comes in and he says, Hobson, I just raised my voice to you. And Hobson's like, I'm sorry, Arthur. I owe you an apology. And that's such a great scene. And 2 or 3 really huge things are happening. One, and again, Arthur's sober, to your point about the wedding. It's like we're seeing it's not so it totally tracks. He's asserting himself to basically his father, and his father is seeing, oh my God, this kid is growing up. Finally, this 45-year-old kid is growing up. And then Hobson intervenes. He goes to Linda and says, here's a dress. I want you to go to the party. Because Hobson's a company man. Like you can imagine, you don't even have to imagine that Hobson's, that Arthur's father and his grandmother are calling Hobson up and being like, get him sober. He's got to be here. Like, he's an employee. I mean, he is. He works for them. And I just love how economical that scene is, how few lines of dialogue it is, and how well played it is by Moore and Gielgud. I mean, we kind of haven't talked enough about John Gielgud, and he won an Oscar for this fucking movie. And this is what I know him from.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen him. He's popped up in Gandhi. He's popped up in this podcast. I've seen him in other things, but this is what I know him from. And I talked a lot about. In fact, he's actually in Chariots of Fire, which wins Best Picture of 1981. So he's got a heavy presence in 1981. And a very small role in that, but it's just funny how he has such a huge Oscar presence in this movie. And my friend Mike Moskowitz pointed out, 1981, we talked about this in the Chariots episode, I don't know if you heard it, all 4 of the actors who won, so Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actress, all were older and have since died. But that's how far back you have to go to find all 4 actor winners no longer living. So from 82 to the present, there's at least 1 to 4 of them still alive. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But anyway, like this character, the Hobson character is so interesting because obviously you look at him. I mean, you're talking about Alec Guinness and David Niven, and Gielgud's in that same vein where you're like, he's got to be British. I mean, Dudley Moore's British too, so that works. But he's got to be British. He's got to have like this sort of stentorian presence to him. But Hobson's really funny too. Like Hobson gives as good as he gets. Like he gives Arthur shit, and it's not like in this cruel way. Like he has a lot of great dialogue. It's such a great character, and you could see. I was looking at it as a script, maybe antithetical to your Linda point. I think if I were reading Hobson, I'd be like, oh my God, we need to get the best British actor, the most distinguished person. I don't even know who that would be today.
Well, I think that's the principal love story of the movie is the 2 of them. It's only with his like passing and which kind of I think makes Dudley Moore Arthur realize his own mortality.
Yeah.
And like, finally, after all these years, kind of wakes him up at the same time that he met someone who feels real.
Yeah. It's like this handoff can happen. It's like, it isn't to say that Arthur couldn't commit to Linda if Hobson were still alive, but I think the fact that Hobson's gone, I think the idea of spending the rest of his life with this woman he doesn't like, forget about if she's well drawn or not, and I agree that she isn't, but it's just too much for him to handle. And I think that's when he finds the courage of just like, I'm never going to have a real conversation with me. And his grandmother, who he can have real conversations with, but she's this authoritarian figure. I can't have a real conversation with anybody because Hobson's gone, and the only other person I connect with, So yeah, I actually think you're right that the real love story of this movie is probably between Hobson and Arthur. Much in the way you could argue the real love story of Jerry Maguire is between Jerry and Rod Tidwell, not Jerry and Dorothy. Which doesn't mean that movie doesn't work, but I think that, and that might have been a huge inspiration to Cameron Crowe. I don't know the man, I never met him, but structurally, this is hitting me now. It's very similar. There's just, I won't do all of them. There's just so many fucking lines in this movie that I love. Some of them I don't quite remember because I watched this movie a couple weeks ago. But the scene, I think the scene that has just the just like the sheer tonnage of one-liners is when Arthur goes to meet Susan's father. Like that, let's call it 5 minutes. I just was laughing so much.
Oh my
I
God.
couldn't catch up with it. And I think Dudley Moore did improvise some of it. Because he was sort of given permission to do that. But it's kind of right from the beginning where it says, "Would you care to wait in the library?" Like, "Yes, I would. The bathroom's out of the question." And then, and then the father says something horrible, and then Arthur goes, "Are you sure you want to be a nightclub comic?" And then this was a little visual, but like there's like the moose hanging up there, and Arthur goes, "This is a tough room." And he looks at the moose. He goes, "Don't have to tell you that."
I
Um,
love that. That's like a classic line.
yeah, like oh, and then the other line I love where he says, the father says, "Arthur, I killed a man when I was 11 years old." And Arthur goes, "When you're 11, you probably don't even know there's a law against that." Like it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just so
Trying to
many.
help him just make peace with that,
Yeah,
which he already obviously has.
yeah. There's a great line. I think it's in his scene with Susan because I think we meet Susan for the first time right after that, where they're sitting in the restaurant, and there's this great line he has there. I think it's in this scene. Tell me if I'm wrong. At least I had the line right, but tell me if I'm wrong about the placement. I think I'm right. Where he says, "Everyone who drinks is not a poet. Some of us drink because we're not poets."
Yeah,
I think that's so self-aware. Like
yeah.
this guy knows exactly who he is. It's interesting.
That's Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying earlier, that he drinks because he's, to keep him numb, because also he's just a lost soul. He
Yeah,
never had to work, he never had to do anything, he didn't have any structure. So he's just kind of done this, and it's like he never found the thing he was good at because he never had to.
right. Yeah. I mean, I also wrote down these aren't so much funny lines, but where you know, Arthur says, "I never got to love anybody." And I think it's Hobson that says, "You feel unloved. Welcome to the world. Everybody feels unloved." Like he's getting a lot of tough love. And because he's sober or sobering, it's finally getting in. And I think it's intentional that Arthur's not 25 years old, that
Yeah.
he's 40, 45. Again, I don't know how old Dudley Moore is, but I don't think they're trying to pass him off as anything younger than 40. I think there's a certain element of like, you got to get married already. You are, like this is embarrassing. This is like this might have like been okay when you were like 27 years old because people could have like it's like, oh, it's just a wild phase. But I think he is this child that's grown older. That's like it's starting to it's like a tacky look. I mean, yes, it's funny, but I think if you saw Arthur on the street, you might have found him charming, but you might be also meaning as we see him in the beginning, but you'd be like, oh, that's kind of sad. Like
Yeah.
this guy's drinking himself silly and clearly doesn't have anyone. And drunks can be funny, but the underlying reason is always sad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and even like the character of Bitterman, who's a very small part, like that guy is an interesting character. Like he's given something to do. Like when like the scene of Bitterman and Arthur at the hospital, it's you feel the weight of that. It's like that's the family unit.
Well, it's kind of like when you see celebrities now, especially, female celebrities, it's like they just surround themselves with this specific group, like these people who, and it's a lot of the time it's people that they pay. And so that was kind of the beginning, I think, of seeing that,
Mm,
having that kind of those paid people who also become your family. Like you think
right.
of like Taylor Swift and her dancers. It's like that's what that is.
Yeah.
And and it's, again, not to say that it's not a real relationship and there isn't real love there, but that is part of the relationship, that someone's getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there've been a lot of movies made about that. I mean, the most recently, what was it called? Jay Kelly with the one with George Clooney and Adam Sandler. Yeah, I think the thing that this childlike quality, I think that's what Linda sees in him. Like he tells that story about I don't know, like escaping from a boys' school or something, and he says something like, I was a bad kid, and she said, I wrote this down. You just wanted to go home. Bad kids don't grow up as nice as you. Like, I think the fact that she sees, like, this is a character who's definitely waiting for somebody to see the good in him. And I
Yes.
think if she had met him drunk like the prostitute did, she might have been amused by him, but I don't think she'd wanna see him again, you know? I think it's just happenstance. Not that it's bad writing. I think the fact that he happened to be sober when he was at the department store, because he was just in between drinks, and he happened to be sober when he saw her, and that he, like, I think that just it was such great luck for him. Like, that's the break he's been waiting for his whole life.
I think he also recognizes she sees something in him, and it's by her seeing something in him, somebody who he's interested in, that he's able to start to see it in himself.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is part of it. I mean, he is at the end of the day a classic narcissist.
Oh, yeah, completely.
And has been enabled to be so his whole life. And so um that character at once challenges him, but also enables. I mean, certainly she's enabling the drinking because she accepts his, wanting to spend the rest of his life with her while he's wasted.
Right.
And but also I think she enables him by like seeing the good in him, and maybe that ultimately turns into him becoming a real person, who's not just wasted all the time and maybe gets a job or just is a little more sober. But I think it's a lot about how she sees him that he's attracted to.
Yeah, I think that's very astute. I think this is thing that happens in life. I don't know how much we see it in movies. I mean, I'm sure we do. The examples for once aren't coming to my mind. Maybe they'll come for you. But I think this is thing that happens in life. It's like you want to kind of be this version of yourself that someone else likes. Not that you're lying, but because he's sober when he meets her, and that's the version of himself that she falls for. He wants to be that version. And because he says early on, I've never taken care of anyone. I've never gotten to take care of anyone. And then Hobson, he's already sick. He gets sick and he dies. And I think that so these two things are so tightly woven that his relationship with Hobson, I think, prepares him to actually be better with Linda. You know,
Mhm.
because she never, there's a scene I love where she goes to the engagement party. And I have to say, this is interesting. I'm the last guy who needs to be talking about fashion. Her dress looks pretty good for how old it is. And what's so
Mhm.
funny is that I rewatched Broadcast News from my 87 podcast, and Holly Hunter's dress is such a bat mitzvah dress. And in the movie, they're like, "Oh my god, that dress is so," the fashion in old movies. But I just remember I wrote that down. I'm like, "Wow, that dress actually looks pretty good." I don't know if it's in style or not, but like that purple
Yeah.
dress, it's like I was like, "That actually doesn't look that bad." Again, I'm the last dude who should be commenting on fashion, but because I just watched Broadcast News where they were like saying, "Hey, look at this dress," and I'm like, Holly Hunter looks like she's going to her bat mitzvah,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But at the time, I mean, I'm sure your bat mitzvah dress probably looked. My sister's bat mitzvah dress looked just like Holly Hunter's, and it was the exact same year.
My bat mitzvah dress had like like the
Up to
huge
here.
shoulders, and then like a bubble skirt that had like fruit painted on it.
Yeah.
And my hair was like so hairsprayed into like this mid tsunami wave.
Yeah.
It was something. It
Yeah.
was.
And if you were older and got married then, that's how you would've looked at your wedding.
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
were 10 years older, whatever.
Meanwhile, my mom got married in, I guess, in the late 60s, maybe, I think late like 69, maybe 70. And anyway, she was wearing a very chic, like, she was, and had her hair, like,
Mm,
she didn't have that going on. That was, yeah. So I guess that was more the 80s
mm.
style, moved away from the chic
Yeah.
late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, my mom was married in '68, and her look was very chic also. It's luck of the draw.
Yeah. The draw of the generation.
Draw of
Yeah.
the generations. I mean, my wife still looks great in my wife's wedding dress still looks great, so maybe we're not far enough away to see what that
Yeah.
was, or maybe it's kind of leveled out, but um I digress. I have a question, and this isn't so much a. I'm curious if you bumped on this. Um, Dudley Moore was an incredible pianist, and like would give concerts. Just like I think it was almost as famous for that as he was for being an actor, because it happened sort of later for him as an actor. As far as movie stardom, at least in America, it was only a couple years before this. He has a small part in Foul Play with Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase, and it's the Blake Edwards movie 10, um, which is like the first thing he's the center of, and that's a huge hit. And this is the follow up. This is like the movie after 10 of like, okay, this guy is a bankable movie star, odd as that may seem. But so there's a scene in this movie where Susan says, Arthur, play something for us. And he's playing, he's playing piano, and he's clearly, clearly playing for real. Do you think Arthur, the character, would be able to learn to play piano like that? I understand he'd be given the opportunity. They probably would have him lessons from like the greatest. Do you think here's my question. Is Arthur, as we know him up to that point, focused enough to learn to play the piano that well? Or am
I
I
think he learned when he was a kid, as like when he also learned, whatever else, like super crazy rich kids in the
horseback
60s,
riding? Yeah.
and or 50s or whatever that was. I bet he had a piano tutor who he drove crazy.
Mhm.
And then when she wasn't like writing the baby Arthur story, and then when she wasn't there, he went and just played himself, but he used those bits that he learned to then, I imagine him being self-taught and just bored and playing and loving the sound of his own voice.
Hmm. Okay, you've convinced me. I only bumped on it because I guess if I didn't know that Dudley Moore played the piano so well, it 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 wouldn't have occurred to me to ask that question. It's like when Mandy Patinkin sings in every movie. It's like this character doesn't fucking sing. Like some of
Yeah.
the characters he played can sing, so I just wondered if it was something where they were
No, I
like,
imagine he went through 10 different piano teachers
okay,
and just learned the basics and then played and taught himself
yeah.
when he was like drunk or whatever. And it was part of like his kind of jovial, like, let's all sing around the piano kind of thing.
Yeah, because okay, you're convincing me because piano was sort of innately boozy and that you could be a bar piano player. I guess my real sort of I guess I wanted one scene before that to set that up, and it could have been done anywhere of just like maybe even maybe him being drunk, being in some bar, maybe in the Wall Street, he just goes to the piano and at the Waldorf
Yeah.
and starts playing. I think I just needed one more um moment of that to make it not but I guess if you didn't know who Dudley Moore was, you might not bump on that. I like the scene. It's not like it's the scene because they do use the scene, when he insults Susan, which I do feel bad for her, but it's still him talking about, you do see like why this guy's the life of the party. I guess I just wanted to see not a set it payoff thing, but maybe it is just one scene more of him playing. I don't know, but maybe I'm just describing too much meta shit to it. But you've convinced me because he would have the greatest piano teacher or teachers in the world, possibly even like, you know, a famous musician, like his mom being like, okay, here's Cole Porter, like here's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
yeah, okay. Well, you kind of talked me into that because in 10, he's playing a songwriter. So him playing piano completely
Yeah.
makes sense. And there's so much of it there's a scene in that movie. I don't know if you've either seen it or seen it recently.
Oh, I haven't seen it recently, but it was like one of my favorites growing up. I was like obsessed with that movie.
Really?
Yeah, I
Interesting.
don't know what I mean, I think because I wanted to be Bo Derek. Like
Oh,
I like she was so gorgeous.
yes.
And I just like to the extent that when I think I was 16, we would go to Acapulco over Christmas, my family, and I had my hair done like that with the beads.
Oh, wow.
And I have very thin hair. So when they did that with my hair, I had like three little like beads, three little like strands, and I looked like an alien. It was the ugliest, least attractive look of all time. And at that moment, though, I was like, I am Bo Derek.
Wow.
So sorry, that was a little non sequitur.
No, no, no. I love non sequiturs. I'll give you another one, kind of tying everything together. Have you seen the other movie that Dudley Moore did with Blake Edwards, Mickey and Maude? Remember that movie? Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, but I don't remember it at all.
So
I
I
didn't see it.
I brought it up in our 1984 episode because I was talking about I spotlighted a sequence from it, and I think that it's another example, maybe the last example of a movie almost foundationally relying on Dudley Moore's charm because in that movie he's playing a bigamist, and that's such a high wire act of like not thinking that this guy's a scumbag, and it's entirely predicated. I mean, casting's important in every movie, but that's and I think that movie's kind of forgotten to time. I mean, you've at least heard of it, but I guess I should do a pod on that movie at some point. But anyway, definitely worth checking out because I feel like for me, looking at Dudley Moore's movie career, for me it's 10, Arthur, and Mickey and Maude, and that's really all I could think of as far as like things that are centered around him because he's such a specific flavor because he's
Yeah.
like I think he's like 4'11" or 5 feet, and but like just kind of played into that, like Michael J. Fox. Like he never tried to make himself look taller. He was just like, I'm short. Let's deal with it. Yeah, I think this so much of this is it just comes down to the chemistry of the people, and I really think Liza Minnelli and Dudley Moore have such great chemistry in this movie, and John Gielgud, and I like Liza Minnelli's scenes with John Gielgud. I think that like I think Hobson kind of respects her. You know,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of like, "Oh, the aspirins are for you, my dear," but he doesn't, and I think that Hobson learns that one thing from Arthur of like, when Arthur kind of snaps at him, I think something changes in Hobson. It's a small arc, but it's just like, "Oh, okay, like this is the woman who's going to make my kid grow up. This is the
Mhm.
woman, this is what he needs. He doesn't need Susan." I don't think Hobson thought Susan was any great shakes before, but Hobson's a company man. He was going to go along with it, but he knows Arthur better than everybody because he spends so much time with him. And I think and he also knows he's dying. That's also a huge part of this.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is the second movie that you and I have talked about, Jordan, where somebody's dying in a hotel room for a really long time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
uh,
that's right. Yeah.
sorry.
This was much less time in the hospital room
Much
than this.
less time, yes, and not as heavy, but whatever we do next, I promise I'll make sure nobody's in a hospital dying.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, anyway, so yeah, I think this is another fascinating sort of artifact of 1981. I think like all the movies we talked about and a few that we have coming up, I won't say this couldn't have been done any other time, but I think you really do see the 1981 here. You really do see, the 70s are ending. We don't have what we think of as these totemic 80s things yet. We don't have the neon and the day glow and the block glass and all that stuff. But you really do start to see from 81 through 83, you really start to see like the 70s getting turned down. And then when you get to 84, which we talked all about in our Amadeus episode, and that movie's set hundreds of years ago, you see it in that movie. Like Amadeus has got a purple wig, and that's not an accident. Um, Anyway, so, Jordan, where can people find you if they wanna find you? Anything you wanna promote? Anything you got coming up?
Um, well, I'm doing a writer's retreat actually in
I
Provence
saw
in
this on Instagram this morning. Tell people about
yeah,
that.
it's this company Forward Retreats, which just recently come to know about, and they organize these amazing, chateaus and grand maisons in Provence and in Chamonix and all these places, and they get writers to get communities together, communities of writers, and mine is kind of focusing on translation and adaptation because that's how I've has been a big part of my career, having been as a novelist, and then I've adapted my own novels for features and for TV. I've adapted other people's novels. I've adapted, an essay I wrote. So that's something. And I just wrote a screenplay that I'm negotiating with the studio right now. So I'm excited about that. Maybe one day that'll get made. Who knows? And going out with Moms Like Us. Moms Like Us as a TV show with MGM and Yalan Chang, who is the showrunner of Handmaid's Tale, who is a dear friend and incredibly brilliant writer. So that's what I've been. And I sold my first piece to the New Yorker.
Oh my God! Congratulations.
That's what I'm most excited about right now.
When is that getting published? Do you have any idea?
I don't. It's going to be, I think, in the next couple weeks, and it's for Shouts and Murmurs. It's a humor piece.
This is okay. So this is going to air June 24th. So only about a month from now. So anyway, everything you're saying.
So it hopefully it'll be out by then, and you'll be able to find it online. I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Jordan Roter Author, JordanRoter Author. That's it. I had to make sure I was spelling author correctly. That's not a good sign.
No, but it's a real sign. Yeah, and definitely check out Moms Like Us. I've read that book. It's really terrific. Is it a limited series, or is it going to be multiple seasons?
Refillable, multiple seasons.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
It's like Big Little Lies, and Bad Sisters, and that kind of lives in that world.
Yeah, and as somebody who's a parent in Los Angeles, I found it incredibly relatable, and I felt like every character, I was like, oh, I know this person, men and women, but the focus is on women. I felt like it was very. I don't think you have to necessarily be from Los Angeles to enjoy this book. I think every community, is the same, but if you are, it is very specific to a world.
I have a friend who lives in Rhode Island, and she was like, I know these women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everywhere, so.
No, it's universal. It's specific and universal. People should definitely check out that book. And everything else Jordan's done. You can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd, both Edward Clow. You can check out some scripts I've written on Script Revolution. You could see some short films I've done on Vimeo. If you have any questions for the pod, things you want to kind of have me talk about, you can write me at hindsightingquestions@gmail.com. If I get a bunch of those, I'll do a mailbag. But if a couple come in, I will give them some credence there. Jordan, thank you. That was such a great conversation, as I knew it would be.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always so fun to chat with you.
Thank you. I'll have you back soon. That's our show. Next episode, we dive into another 1980 wonder as Michael Prince and I discuss Outland. Till then, looking forward to looking back.